In the sun-baked town of Ogbomoso, where the breeze carried gossip more efficiently than any postal service and where roosters competed with preachers for morning attention, there lived a man who considered himself the last standing pillar of sense. His name was Pa Sunday Okeowo, retired teacher, grammar purist, and full-time village philosopher. He was known for two things: his obsession with education and his famously stubborn insistence that a boy without books is a man without backbone. He wore the same wide-rimmed spectacles he had donned since 1987, thick as sugarcane syrup and often fogged with sweat. His walking stick, a gift from an old student now working as a mechanic in Ibadan, was carved with the words "Education in a Light" and tethered against the red earth-like punctuation to his every step. Despite his proud manner, Pa Sunday's house bore the quiet humility of a teacher's pension. The compound was a dusty square hugged by aging walls and overgrown hibiscus. It was clean but tired, like a man who had given all his strength to his children and now asked for nothing but rest. His pride, however, remained untouched: his only son, Kunle, the last born and last hope. Kunle was meant to be more than a village boy. More than the local palm wine tapper's apprentice or another roadside recharge card seller. No, he was destined to be a university graduate with grammar thick enough to confuse poverty, as Pa Sunday loved to say. But like any big dream in a small village, sacrifice stood as the toll. There was one item in the Okeowo household more treasured than even Pa Sunday's English dictionary: a plump, proud nanny goat named Iyabo. She wasn't just livestock. No, Iyabo was family. She had been given to Mama Rank, Pa Sunday's wife, as a wedding gift from her late uncle, the town's only man to have died laughing, they said. Over the years, Iyabo had become a fixture in their lives. She bleated like a clock at dawn, patrolled the compound like a second wife, and nibbled cassava with the delicate arrogance of royalty. When Mama Rank was sad, Iyabo laid beside her. When visitors came, she inspected them with slow, judgmental eyes. "She's more faithful than some husbands," Rank would often say, casting a glance at her husband over her cooking pot. On the morning the world shifted, the sun rose lazily over the rooftops, casting long shadows across the compound. Roosters crowed. A baby cried next door. Smoke drifted from clay stoves as the day began its usual, noisy rhythm. But Pa Sunday had been up since before the roosters. He sat at the edge of his raffia bed, staring at an open letter from Kunle's university. A fresh reminder of unpaid fees. The third one in 2 months. He rubbed his eyes. Adjusted his spectacles. Read the letter again as if the words might change. He stood up slowly, knees crackling like old firewood, and walked to the corner of the room where his leather slippers sat. He slipped them on, tucked his walking stick under his arm, and reached for an old rope hanging on a nail. Outside, Mama Rank was squatting by the fire, fanning embers. She didn't look up at first. "Sunday, where are you going with rope this early?" He didn't answer immediately. He moved toward the goat pen, whistling low. She stood up, squinting. "Is it not Iyabo's rope you're holding?" Still, he said nothing. He bent down to stroke the goat's head. Iyabo leaned into his touch, unaware. Rank's voice sharpened. "I said, where are you taking my goat?" "To invest in the boy's future," he said finally, beginning to loop the rope around the goat's neck. "Sunday, don't try me this morning." He straightened, facing her. "You want the boy to drop out? Then sell your transistor radio. Sell your dictionary. Not my goat. She's not your goat. She's the family's. And she's going where she's needed most. To the butcher. To a better tomorrow." Rank's breath caught. Her wrapper fell slightly from one shoulder as she took a step forward. "That goat slept beside me during my miscarriage. That goat nibbled your hand when you had typhoid. She's not just meat, Sunday." He sighed, adjusting the rope. "And Kunle is not just a boy. He is our only son. If we don't sacrifice for him, what's the point of all this? Iyabo bleated. Pa Sunday looked at his wife, then at the goat. I am not doing this for pride, he said, softer now. I am doing it for possibility. She didn't speak again. Only watched as Iyabo was led out of the compound like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Some villagers nodded in admiration. That's a man who knows what matters. Others whispered behind their hands. Man's cell companion for son that might not even finish school. TCH. Children watched wide-eyed. The butcher, already informed, waited by the road. Mama Rong stood at the doorway, eyes full of rain, lips tight with fury. Her voice came out low and trembling. You sold my goat to feed your pride. Pa Sunday, already halfway down the dusty path, turned slightly. No, he muttered, I sold her to feed your son's future. And with that, he and Iyabo disappeared around the corner, into the story that would one day define them all. The Lagos sun did not rise, it assaulted. Harsh and heavy, it bounced off rooftops, glared through windows, and turned buzz fumes into choking clouds. It was into this chaos that Kunle Okeowo stepped off the rickety interstate bus, dragging behind him a tired Ogbomoso bag, a head full of dreams, and a stomach fluttering with excitement and fear. He paused on the dusty roadside just outside Unicity University, eyes wide. He had never seen so many people in one place. Students buzzed like flies on mango. Their laughter, chatter, and blaring music competed for air. The campus was alive with the pulse of possibility. He adjusted his shirt collar and whispered under his breath, "This is it." Somewhere far behind him, in a butcher stall back in Ogbomoso, a goat had once bleated for the last time so that he might stand here. The first few days felt like a dream. Kunle threw himself into lectures with the zeal of a revivalist. He sat in front rows, scribbled notes furiously, and studied his course outlines like holy scripture. He joined 2 study groups, signed up for the campus newsletter, and called home every Sunday evening to report his progress. "Papa, I now understand macroeconomics," he said on one such call. Pa Sunday's voice crackled over the line. "Oh, that's my boy." Confused them with grammar. Even Mama Rong picked the phone briefly. "Eat well, my son. Don't let Lagos turn you to broomstick." Kunle laughed. "I'm even fatter now, Ma." "Good. That's how success starts." But Lagos, like a clever thief, waits patiently to steal one's innocence. It started slowly. A missed lecture here. A postponed assignment there. Kunle began to notice things: the laughter of girls with manicured nails, the flash of smartphones, the swagger of boys with loud perfume and louder voices. They walked like they owned the ground. Spoke like life owed them pleasure. And most dangerously, they seemed to have fun. One evening, his roommate, Lonra, burst in wearing sunglasses indoors and holding a flyer. "There's a party tonight, bro. First year welcome. Free suyo. Come now." Kunle hesitated. "I have a quiz tomorrow." Lonra waved him off. "Abeg. Life is not by quiz. You need soft life. You want to graduate with ulcer." That night, Kunle danced under colored lights. It was his first taste of Lagos nightlife. It wouldn't be his last. Within months, Kunle had a new wardrobe, mostly borrowed or bought on credit. He walked with a sway. Used words like lit, vibes, and levels. The once disciplined boy who recited textbook definitions now quoted Instagram captions and motivational tweets. He stopped calling home regularly. The weekly calls turned to monthly text. One afternoon, staring at himself in the mirror, he tried on a leather jacket he couldn't afford and borrowed sunglasses from Lonra. He posed. "Big man levels," he whispered, grinning. In that moment, he was no longer the boy from Ogbomoso. He was Lagos. Loud, sleek, half honest. He forgot the goat. He forgot the rope. He forgot the silent tears of Mama Ronk and the hopeful pride of Pa Sunday. The weight of pretending. Shame has a voice, but Connor had found a way to mute it. Letters. He wrote them with flair. Dear Papa, I have been elected president of the Faculty of Advanced Brilliance. They say I'm the youngest first-class student in the university's history. Pa Sunday would read the letters aloud to neighbors under the mango tree. Listen, listen, he boomed. That's my son. Connor the genius. He's making waves in Lagos. Old men nodded. Young women giggled. Someone even began calling Pa Sunday Baba Academics. He started wearing agbada on Sundays, even to the market. Sprayed cologne before afternoon naps. Whenever someone questioned him, he'd point to Connor's letter and say, my investment is yielding returns. But in Lagos, Connor was barely surviving. He owed lecturers apologies, owed classmates group work, and owed his landlord 3 months' rent. His grades, like his dreams, were falling. Still, the lies comforted him. They were easier to carry than the truth. Lagos is a city with too many secrets and too few places to hide. Yet somehow, Connor became a master of camouflage. Not the kind you wear, but the kind you live. His life had become a costume party, and he was the reluctant host. Each morning, he slipped into borrowed confidence like a second skin. He wore fake smiles the way others wore wristwatches, always on display. But the weight of truth grew heavier, dragging at the corners of his heart like soaked clothes. So he began to write. Not truth. No, fiction disguised as fact. The first letter came on a rye. The first letter came on a rainy Friday. The roof in his hostel leaked, his phone battery had died, and he had just been kicked out of class for failing to submit an assignment he didn't know existed. He sat on the edge of his mattress, borrowed pen in hand, and began. Dear Papa, hope this letter finds you and Mama well. Campus life is full of challenges, but by God's grace, I'm succeeding. In fact, I was recently selected to represent my faculty in an international symposium on intellectual growth. He paused, looked at the dripping ceiling, and continued. I may need to travel to Abuja next month. My lecturers say I'm showing promise. He folded the letter and smiled for the first time that day. It worked. That evening, when Pa Sunday read it aloud beneath the mango tree, his chest swelled like a ripe pawpaw. Did you hear that? He asked anyone who passed. Abuja. Faculty ambassador. My son. From then on, the letters became a performance. One described how Connor was chosen to lead a student innovation team. Another claimed he was top of his class, earning a scholarship soon. A third included a sketch of a Student of the Month award plaque. He even used a ruler. Each lie wrapped his guilt in new layers of comfort. In Ogbomoso, the Okeowo compound was now known as the home of future professor. Neighbors stopped by just to greet Pa Sunday, not out of courtesy, but hoped that some of Connor's genius might rub off on them. Mama Ronk took to wearing Iro and Buba with brighter colors. She walked straighter, laughed louder. Even Iyabo's absence began to feel justified. After all, hadn't she paved the way? Meanwhile, Connor was disappearing. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. He stopped going to classes completely. At first it was accidental. Then it became intentional. He owed too many explanations he didn't have energy to give. Some nights, he sat on the hostel rooftop with a bottle of cheap gin, watching planes blink across the dark sky. He wondered if one of them might carry him away, maybe to a place where he wasn't a disappointment wearing disguise. Lonra, now fully immersed in Lagos nightlife, had stopped bothering with lectures too. One evening, as they both sat on the stairs outside their hostel, Connor asked, "Do you ever feel like you're pretending?" Lonra laughed. "Bro, Everyone in this city is pretending. You think that babe on Instagram really flies to Dubai every week? Half the boys shouting soft life don't even own mattress. Connor tried to laugh, but it came out like a cough. But no lie can stand forever. A lecturer confronted him one day after class. "You still exist," the man said, adjusting his glasses. "I thought you dropped out." Connor smiled weakly. "Been sick, sir." "Then write a letter to the HOD. Otherwise, you fail by default." He nodded, heart pounding. But he never wrote the letter. Instead, he wrote another one to his parents. "Dear Mama and Papa, things are moving fast. I've been nominated for an exchange program in South Africa. I may not be able to call for a few weeks, preparations are intense. Please send prayers." He sealed the lie with his usual sign-off. "Your son in destiny, Connor." He stared at the envelope long after it was sealed. Something in him whispered, this will not end well. He ignored it. What no one knew, not even Connor, was that the university was already investigating him. His name had appeared on a leaked exam list. There was no evidence he personally stole the questions. But his phone number had been found in the group chat. In a place like Lagos, guilt often didn't require proof. Just association. The dean of students called him in. Connor wore his cleanest shirt and combed his hair. They didn't ask many questions. They just handed him a letter. "This is to inform you that due to your involvement in academic misconduct, you are hereby expelled from Unicity University with immediate effect." He stood frozen for several seconds. "But I didn't." "It's final," the woman said, not unkindly. "You may appeal. But don't hold your breath." Connor left the building with no degree, no money, and no friends. He wandered the streets that night like a ghost in denim. The city that once promised him everything now spit him out like bitter cola. He couldn't go forward. And he couldn't go home. But he had nowhere else to go. So he bought a 2,000 Nigerian Nairas Danfo ticket to Ogbomoso. Sat by the window. Hid his face behind his elbow. When the bus pulled away, Lagos didn't notice. The Danfo bus grumbled and groaned its way toward Ogbomoso, each bump in the road a punctuation mark on Connor's regret. He sat by the window, his face turned toward the blur of passing landscapes, rusted zinc roofs, stubborn cassava fields, barefoot children kicking up dust. The bag on his lap was too light. It held no degree. No awards. Just 2 shirts, a half-used deodorant, and a student ID that now meant nothing. He reached into his pocket and touched the folded paper, the expulsion letter, as if it might vanish if he didn't look at it. It didn't. It stayed, a curse written in official ink. He hadn't told his parents. He had sent no letter, made no call. He just ran. The dusty path to his father's compound hadn't changed. The same crooked neem tree leaned over the junction. The same gossiping women sat beneath the mango tree, wrappers tucked under their ties, bowls of okra and bitterness in hand. But Connor had changed. He walked slower now, as if shame were shackled to his ankles. His heart thudded with every step. His palms sweat. When he reached the gate, he paused, wiping his brow and trying to steady his breath. Inside, the sound of celebration caught him off guard. Laughter. Chicken feathers. The clatter of pots. He pushed the gate open. In the compound, Pa Sunday stood proudly, holding a live chicken upside down by its legs, whistling a high life tune. He wore his finest wrapper and a white singlet stretched proudly across his chest. Smoke wafted from a nearby cooking fire where Mama Rong stirred a large pot of jollof rice. Even the neighbors had gathered. A bench had been set under the mango tree with extra chairs arranged like a mini party was brewing. Connor blinked, confused. His mother looked up and gasped. Connor. Pa Sunday turned, beamed, and raised the chicken like a trophy. Oh, my son has returned. Look at him, Lagos has put weight on your bones. He dropped the chicken into a basket. Where's your result? Did you bring the certificate? Oh, you must have graduated first class. The words hit Connor like stones. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. His tongue shivered. His knees trembled. They are still marking it, he whispered, voice barely audible. Silence fell like harmattan dust. Heavy. Dry. Unavoidable. Mama Ronk stepped forward slowly, holding something wrapped in raffia. She untied it gently. Inside was a small, wide-eyed baby goat. This one is mine, she said, voice flat. If you like, sell it again. I swear on your father's mustache, I will sell you too. Her eyes held no humor. Connor dropped his gaze. The pot of jollof was abandoned. The chicken, once meant for celebration, retreated into its basket, spared. That night, nobody ate. The next morning, Connor sat alone on the compound's front step. The air smelled of smoke and dust. A lizard darted across the ground, pausing to do push-ups. Somewhere far off, a cock crowed, confused about the time. Connor's stomach grumbled. His soul did, too. The door creaked. Pa Sunday emerged, still in his wrapper, his face unreadable. He sat beside his son, their shoulders inches apart but words away. They sat like that for a while, saying nothing. Then, quietly, Pa Sunday asked, was it girls? Drinks? Or just foolishness? Connor's voice cracked. All of it. His father nodded slowly. At least you did not add cult to the list. Connor smiled faintly, painfully. No, sir. Good. Your head is not entirely mad. They sat a little longer. Why didn't you tell us? His father finally asked. I didn't know how. I didn't want to disappoint you. Pa Sunday looked at the horizon. You think pretending was better? You think I killed Iyabo to read fake letters under this mango tree? Connor's throat tightened. I'm sorry, Papa. I know. Silence. Then, a long sigh from Pa Sunday. Even goats return home when they are lost, why not sons? Later that evening, Mama Ronk handed Connor a calabash of warm pap and a frown. No meat, she warned. You have not earned it. He nodded humbly, drinking with quiet gratitude. The baby goat, now named Mojop, danced across the compound, bleating loudly as if scolding Connor in goat speak. He smiled. It was the first genuine one in weeks. That night, the family sat under the moonlight. They didn't speak much. Just listened to the crickets, the distant singing of a vigil, and the slow breathing of their shared pain. Pa Sunday took a sip of palm wine, then muttered, next time, I'll just send the goat to school. Even Mama Ronk laughed at that. And so, the storm didn't pass entirely. But the sky began to clear. The days after Connor's return passed slowly, like a funeral procession with no drummers. The celebration that had been planned melted into a heavy, awkward silence that hung over the Okeowo compound like wet laundry. Connor kept to himself. He swept the compound every morning, chopped firewood without being asked, fetched water from the well before his mother's voice could rise. It wasn't guilt that drove him, not anymore, but a quiet yearning to make things right, even if no one ever said so. He never asked for meat. He didn't complain when the neighbors whispered. He simply walked. And waited. Every evening, after the sun had dipped below the rooftops and the orange sky melted into dusk, Pa Sunday would sit beneath the old mango tree in the compound. It was his throne, his pulpit, and his hiding place. He wore the same faded cap he had owned since his teaching days, a relic from a time when knowledge felt like a shield against poverty. On one such evening, with crickets chirping and the baby goat chewing on a forgotten shoelace, he sipped from his calabash and spoke aloud. Not to anyone in particular. "Do you know," he said, swirling the palm wine gently, "there was a time I believed education could fix anything. Like cassava that cures its own poison." He chuckled quietly. "But it turns out, even big grammar cannot repair a broken character." Kunle, who had just returned from scrubbing the clay floor of the kitchen, paused by the doorway. He said nothing. His father continued. "Still, I would rather raise a failure who tells the truth than a genius who builds life with lies." Kunle stepped closer. "Then I was both." Pa Sunday looked up, his eyes old but clear. "For now," he said. "But every day gives a man a chance to start again. Until he dies." In her quiet way, Mama Rong softened sooner than expected. She didn't offer words. She offered food. After 4 days of no meat, a small piece of dried fish appeared in Kunle's egusi soup. She said nothing about it, but her eyes lingered on his face as he ate, watching for the gratitude. He noticed. He said, "Thank you, Mama." She nodded and walked away, but her back was straighter than it had been in days. That night, as they all sat outside under the starlight, she told the story of how Iyabo once chased a hawk from stealing a baby chick, bleating like a soldier. They all laughed. Even Kunle. Word of Kunle's return spread fast. Ogbomoso had a way of wrapping everyone's business into shared ownership. Some people were kind, offering greetings, subtle encouragements, even job suggestions. Others were less forgiving. "That boy. Waste of goat," one man muttered at the market. But Kunle didn't answer. He carried his father's basket with pride. He waited in line at the meal like everyone else. He helped his mother pound yam, walked barefoot to church, and offered to tutor younger students for free in the evenings. The boy who once vanished into Lego smoke began to reappear in bits, not the same as before, but perhaps stronger because of the brick. One evening, just as the moon rose, Kunle found his father staring at a stack of old letters beneath the mango tree, all the ones he had sent, every lie folded in ink. "Why keep them?" Kunle asked softly. Pa Sunday tapped the letters with his fingers. "To remind me that love is sometimes blind, but also that blindness can be cured." Kunle sat beside him. "I want to start again," he said. "Maybe teach. I'm not sure. But I don't want the story to end here." Pa Sunday nodded slowly. "It doesn't have to. But you must write this next chapter with your hands, not your mouth." "I will." They sat together, not as a disappointed father and a disgraced son, but as men, broken, mending, human. The wind shifted. The stars blinked gently above. That night, Pa Sunday whispered something to the moon, as if it were an old friend. "At least I tried." And somewhere in the goat pen, Mojop, the baby goat, let out a long bleat, neither happy nor sad, just full of presence. The night swallowed it gently. Ogbomoso slept. And tomorrow waited. Ogbomoso had a rhythm. Roosters crowed just before dawn. Smoke curled from kitchen fires at sunrise. The women fetched water with laughter on their lips. Life marched forward, even when hearts lagged behind. But in the compound of Pa Sunday Okeowo, change had taken root, not loud or dramatic, but steady, like the quiet cracking of dry ground before the rain. It began with one chalkboard. Kunle dragged it from the back of the old storeroom, dusted it off, and propped it under the mango tree where his father once lectured neighborhood children during school holidays. With borrowed chalk and a cracked bench, he wrote in bold, looping letters. "Free evening lessons, for any child willing to learn." The first day, only 2 children came, the tailor's daughter and the palm wine tapper's mischievous boy. The second day, 5. By the end of the week, there were 12. They brought slates, exercise books. Some came barefoot. Some came hungry. Connor taught them math, English, and confidence. He didn't call it a school. He called it a second chance. At first, Pa Sunday stayed silent. He would sit inside, pretending to read the newspaper, though he often peered through the window. He saw how Connor knelt beside a struggling pupil. How he cheered small victories. How he repeated lessons with patient care. Then one afternoon, as Connor taught the difference between affect and affect, Pa Sunday stepped outside. He didn't interrupt. He just pulled up a stool and sat beside the chalkboard. After class, he cleared his throat. "Your handwriting is improving." Connor smiled. "Yours is still straighter." Pa Sunday looked at the kids skipping away with laughter and dusty feet. "If you keep this up," he said, "they'll start calling me Boba School again." Connor's chest warmed. "I'd be proud if they did." Mama Ronk, ever practical, began cooking small pots of food during class hours. She claimed the rice was extra, but somehow, it was always enough for every child. She fed them with gentle scoldings. "Eat fast, and go and no book. Or you'll end up chasing goats like your Uncle Sunday." The children laughed, mouths full of hope. And she always packed a small bowl aside, for Connor. Even when she said nothing, that gesture spoke volumes. One hazy morning, a man in glasses and a clean buba arrived at the compound. He introduced himself as Mr. Odid, a government inspector overseeing rural education programs. "I heard of a young man teaching under a mango tree," he said. "I thought it was village gossip. But now, I see the truth." He watched the lesson. He spoke with the children. He asked Connor questions, took notes, and then smiled. "You may not have a certificate," he said, "but you have a gift." A week later, a letter arrived offering Connor a scholarship to finish his education at a local college, with a part-time role assisting in community tutoring programs. When the letter was read aloud under the mango tree, Pa Sunday didn't cry. But he did walk into the goat pen and whisper something to Mojab. "You see, this one will not waste your aunt's sacrifice." Connor packed his things again, but this time with clean clothes, books, and a sense of purpose. He wasn't running away. He was rising. Before he left, Mama Rong gave him a new wrapper. Pa Sunday gave him a pen. And Mojab, mischievous as ever, tried to follow him to the gate. He turned back and bowed to them. "No more lies," he promised. And they believed him. At sunset, Pa Sunday sat again beneath the mango tree. This time, no letters, no chicken, no waiting. Just peace. He took a sip from his calabash, his eyes on the path. "Education is like planting maize," he said aloud. "You may lose some to birds, but if you water it right, it will feed you someday." Inside, Mama Ronk hummed as she folded wrappers. And somewhere in the distance, children recited multiplication tables under a different tree, inspired by the boy who once forgot, but finally remembered who he was. And so, the goat was not wasted. She was transformed into something even greater than a certificate. Into a second chance.